trilateral meeting, or is it just you and
To be determined, but I would say most likely it's going to be a double meeting. It'll be a double meeting, but we will have the president, Zelensky, in touch. There's a lot of bad blood with the two presidents.
I mean, it's a flex, and it's an expansion of like what previously would be unfathomable. Just like when Benjamin Netanyahu flies to the United States of America, even though it's not a party to the Rome Statute, so like, or it's not under the ICC jurisdiction. That's an expansion. That's a flex. That's to say, like, yeah, we are able to do war crimes, be branded a war criminal, and still get protection, political protection from the most powerful nation on the planet. And this is working in an identical fashion where after years and years of valid concerns and posturing, even though it is hypocritical for the Western world to posture against anyone doing war crimes, because they do it themselves as well. But regardless, like war crimes are still war crimes, okay? It is valid for Vladimir Putin to be branded a war criminal, 100%. And this basically is another expansion of what previously was considered unfathomable. He's going on European soil. He's going on European soil as someone who is supposed to be branded a war criminal by the ICC to basically have a meeting with the President of the United States of America. That's it. That's like, I don't know. I just, I understand. I understand that in order for peace to prevail, you do need to communicate with the adversaries. I am in favor of this. I'm in favor of treaties. I'm in favor of peace. I'm in favor of longstanding ceasefires, no matter where it is, right? And I've been an advocate since day one, and have been yelled at quite a bit by pro-NATO people for this position, saying that I want Ukraine to fall into the hands of Russian control or some shit like that. But I don't even think that this is actually anything beyond Putin taking advantage of Trump once again by claiming that he will be more receptive to Trump's advances while still continuing his strategy on the ground. And with less power in the hands of the United States of America around the global stage, Putin gets away with this. And in the absence of America bringing China to the table, like bringing all parties involved in this to the table to commit to longstanding peace, offering a favorable deal to all parties without completely eroding Ukrainian sovereignty, I don't believe that there is going to be a just or equitable or any solution whatsoever. But I don't think America is going to do that because they're still playing a different ball game. They're still behaving with the rules of post-World War II. Like, they're still operating on the Cold War boundaries or beyond Cold War boundaries. Like, they're still operating like it's the post-Cold War era of peak neoliberalism from like the 80s and 90s all the way to the early 2000s to 2010s, where there's only one game in town, and that's the United States of America. There's only one player in town that, and when they say jump, everybody says how high, and it's gone. It's over. This is not how it works anymore. That's it. If you are a foreign adversary that is a nuclear superpower and you want to engage in irredentist behavior against your neighboring nations, as Russia has done, you get to do it. And there are enough economic, there is a powerful economic counterbalance to America's global prominence here that can back Russia. And that is China. So unless you actually try to reach a reasonable deal with China and bring them to the table, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to happen. And Russia will continue to say, oh yeah, we want peace for sure. We want to stop the war for sure, without actually doing that. And if you have shown over the past couple of years that you are not capable of striking an economic blow that is significant enough to Russia to force them to stand down, and you can't present a strong enough defensive force against Russian military incursion into Ukraine, as the past couple of years have demonstrated, then you have to look for a different alternative. That's it. America is not recognizing that we are no longer living in a world where it is the hegemonic superpower. We are living in a multipolar world, and the American government doesn't recognize that and postures as though they are the singular power still. They're not. The faster they recognize this, the easier things will be. But it kind of feels like America's just going to refuse to do that and continue bullying our allies, continue bullying the countries that are vassal states, demanding more tribute from them, with hopes that that kind of reinforcement of power, prominence, and influence will cause others to remember who's really in charge. But I think all that does is ultimately shorten the timeline of American empire, because eventually there are going to be actors in these countries that demand sovereignty and will say, all right, we're done. We're done with this shit. When America suffers, the whole world suffers, as you can see, because the decisions that we make are consequential for everyone. And empires do not go away quietly. They oftentimes actually become increasingly more violent. Okay?
President Putin doesn't agree to peace in Hungary. What do you do then? Do you have...
Well, let's see what happens. I mean, what if? I think he will. I think that President Putin wants to end the war, or it wouldn't be talking this way. I think he wants to end the war. I spoke to him yesterday for 2.5 hours. We went through a lot of details. He wants to get it ended. I think that President Zelensky wants to get it ended. Now we have to get it done.
President Trump, Kara Castro.
I have even less confidence, judging by what he has done so far, and also judging by how little power of influence he has over Vladimir Putin here, in the absence of trying to set a side deal with China. Okay, that's a big if, and he's not going to do that regardless. I have even less confidence that he is going to secure a ceasefire here than maintaining a permanent ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians. Okay? Because remember, America could stop Israel with one phone call, but America cannot stop a foreign adversary with one fucking phone call. It doesn't work that way. Okay? So he has even less leverage in this situation. He has no leverage whatsoever in this situation. In terms of telling Putin what to do and what not to do, he has zero fucking leverage. Okay? So you must gain leverage. How do you gain leverage? You bring other larger parties, larger backers. Okay? One other way to try to escalate the tariff regime is by going to the secondary markets that Russia utilizes. India, right? But that is far too consequential for America's relationship with India, because if Russia is using India as a secondary market to allow its oil and gas industry to enter the international marketplace as a mediator, right? And America wants to put an end to that, that is going to cause financial harm to India. India is obviously still self-interested. And they're going to go, yeah, we're not going to do that, okay? They're going to say, we're not going to fucking do that. Sorry, big dog, that's not happening. Or they're going to reconsider who they want to be in the sphere of influence of. Right now, they're fine with being in the sphere of influence of the West, while also simultaneously playing in the, playing the middleman role that they have, a bulwark against China. But also, they're also simultaneously too close to China in proximity to take a stronger stance against China to begin with, and especially if China seemingly is demanding less restraint, or if China is seemingly not pushing ridiculous conditions on India when America is pushing conditions on India that they consider to be unfathomable, then that's going to ruin America's influence over India as well. It's going to hurt America's influence over India in general. Because in the past, when you were the singular hegemonic superpower, everyone had to deal with you. But now there is an alternative. And when there is an alternative, every action that you take needs to walk a fine line. If you are too heavy-handed with other regional powers like India, if you are far too aggressive in your approach and you make demands that they consider to be bad for their own sovereignty, for their own people, for their own economic outlook, then they have another person that they can go to. So far, from the perspective of at least the European vassal states, they have not moved in the direction of China. Okay? They are still very much servile to Western interests. I think, xenophobia and Orientalist frameworks play somewhat of a role in this calculation for sure. And I think they're also terrified of living under a unipolar Chinese global rulership, because they've benefited greatly from Western power exchanging hands, but only going back to another Western country like the United States of America. And they are too fearful of having to deal with China, even as an even competitor. And they're especially fearful of having to be servile to Chinese foreign policy and Chinese interests. Okay? But India might have different considerations. India is too close in proximity to China. India has also shown time and time again that in spite of their, in spite of their back and forth with China, that they are willing to leverage a relationship with China. They're willing to leverage that to get better deals from the West. So this is something that Donald Trump has to consider.
Over from Lindell TV, and although I love asking
my point
questions
is, I don't
today,
think
my
they
question
can.
is-
I don't think they can rely on anti-China tendencies. I don't think they can rely on like the existing anti-China tendencies of India for as long as they have, especially if China decides to offer better deals to India, for example, or a lot less restraint.
President Trump, you are the middleman right now, hoping to end this conflict. Who is doing a better job negotiating, President Zelensky or President Putin?
I think they're both doing a great job in that sense. We have to get it done. We've got to take some of the hatred of each other. You know, they don't like each other. I say that in front of President Zelensky, but I say it in front of President Putin too. They have tremendous bad blood. It really is what is holding up, I think, a settlement. I think we're going to get it done, and we have to make it long-lasting. As I said in the Middle East, everlasting, right? Everlasting. And the Middle East is a much more...
What concessions can Trump give to India to make them more favorable to their position? I do not know. Someone in the chat asked that question. I actually don't know. But what I do know is India currently enjoys the leveraged position that it has between China and the United States of America, and it certainly enjoys cheap oil and gas coming from Russia. So demanding that they actually stop that trade and shut off Russia's entry point into the international market is probably a non-starter, and therefore I'm not so sure how Trump is going to get to do that. Maybe I do think that as far as Russia goes, even without Chinese backing, they do have the power to influence the They have the power to influence like a global oil shock if they wanted to. I mean, I don't know how much power they have at OPEC Plus. I mean, they still have a lot of power. America obviously has a lot of allies there too. Having said that, Russia still has the capacity to influence these decisions, and therefore cutting them out from the international market is going to be very difficult. Cutting them out and cutting their oil and gas from the international market is going to be impossible, okay? But that is like one of the last tools in the tool belt that America has, because they already deployed the mother of all sanctions on Russia. Like, there are still some things that they can do to fuck with Russia's bag, but the mother of all sanctions did not work seemingly, right? And if anything, it might have actually played a formative role in the creation of this secondary market outside of the SWIFT-backed petrodollar system. So every single day that goes by, I feel like America's leverage power is waning on the global stage. And they are not cognizant of this, I don't think. Or at least they're behaving as though that's not a reality. Isn't that kind of good? I mean, broadly, a multipolar world, depending on how both parties that at least still control certain parts of the planet operate, could be a better future. It's just that no one seemingly wants to engage in a collaborative effort here, and everyone is simply posturing, especially America. America's getting increasingly belligerent. Yeah, a multipolar world under capitalism is not good. Just different bad is right.
Well, India is not going to be buying Russian oil anymore. And Hungary is sort of stuck because they have one pipeline that's been there for years and years and years, and they're inland. They don't have sea. And I spoke with the very...
That's crazy that he has a lower standard for Hungary purchasing Russian oil as opposed to India. I mean, that's when he says India's not buying any more Russian oil. I don't know how much I believe him. I feel like he's just saying that at the domestic front in an effort to make it seem like he's doing things. Okay? That's what it feels like to me. It feels like to me he's just kind of saying that so that people feel like he's doing something. MAGA believes this? I mean, yeah, MAGA believes that Donald Trump is not Jeffrey Epstein's best friend, okay? They're stupid. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about that. Like, there's got to be a certain point where you have been there's got to be a certain point when you've been the recipient of so many awards where eventually, you know, you've been fooled so many fucking times. Like, at a certain point, I'm going to start believing that you enjoy it. You enjoy being fooled. Okay? You're kind of a cultist. Yeah. If you're looking like Admiral Zhukov with the Fell For It Again awards all over your fucking chest, maybe you enjoy it.
Talk yesterday with President Putin. We'll see what happens. But the war in the Middle East was far more complicated. We got that one done. And I think we have a good chance. I think President Zelensky wants it done, and I think President Putin wants it done. Now all they have to do is get along a little bit.
President Trump.
Yeah, I think Zelensky wants to get it done more than Putin. I think Putin wants to take as much territory as he can while extending the timeline over and over again with like these unique gestures of goodwill that Trump takes sincerely every single time. Not to sound like a NATO Andy, but there was an opportunity to do this when Trump became president. And I even gave him credit for at least talking to Vladimir Putin directly, something that I wished the Biden administration did on numerous occasions, because you do have to talk to the opposition here. You have to talk to the belligerent here in order to cut a treaty, in order to have permanent peace. Having said that, given the lack of leverage that America has, especially because they've exhausted almost all of the options.
And China wants to talk, and we like talking to China. So we have a very good relationship, and we're going to be meeting in South Korea a couple of weeks. And I just got back from a long trip. I'm going on another long trip. And Scott, you want to say a few words on that, please?
Yes, sir. So the entire relationship stems from the great respect that the two leaders have for each other. China did a substantial, unprovoked escalation last week. We were unable to get
literally not unprovoked. Literally not unprovoked. And also in line with exactly our trade posture against China for decades.
For them since then, it's been IMF World Bank Week. They have had working level people here who there have been meetings.
Yeah, this is the same as Israel always does a preemptive first strike, a defensive first strike, and anyone that retaliates against the United States of America is always retaliating, but it's unfair that they're doing so. Okay? Always. Venezuela is provoking Trump by existing, for example, existing on top of massive natural oil reserves. This is a provocation that must be addressed. China, over the course of the last 3 decades, has become the manufacturing hub of the planet. This was our design for international trade. America designed the world in this way. Okay? We benefited greatly from it. Problem is, now they got too much power as the manufacturing hub of the entire planet. This is a provocation. That's fucked up. This is unfair. How dare they? This is inappropriate. We must address this. We must blow up the global trade design that we put together for no reason. Like for literally no reason other than Trump's endless need for money molestation.
But you have to understand, we never got anything from China. It was a one-way street. For many years, for decades, it was a one-way street. And they became rich because of the United States. And frankly, presidents that, let's be nice, they didn't know. They just didn't know. They didn't understand what was happening to them. But I understood it. I understood it long before I ran for politics. I used to watch in amazement at how stupid.
Is someone going to explain what's going on? Yes. Donald Trump is saying that without saying who is responsible for this, Donald Trump is attributing American international trade policy for the past 3 or 4 decades directly to Democrats and even Republicans that have played a formative role in this design, because this design has allowed China to get unimaginable power, becoming the international manufacturing hub with a robust industrial base. And instead of Donald Trump getting mad at the capital owners that played a major role in seeking out a cheaper labor market and completely restructuring the global economy to be reliant on China as the manufacturing hub, instead of getting mad at the forces of capital that have played a role in this grand design, he's just saying, oh, these guys just made they made tremendous mistakes in international trade policy. And the reason why he's saying that is because obviously as a billionaire, he himself is also one of those people who benefited from this relationship. That's why the Donald Trump ties or any number of different like Donald Trump products were also being manufactured in China. And they still are. That's why half of his merch is coming from China. Okay? The problem with China, from the American perspective, is that they weren't kept servile. They were able to take advantage of the unlimited greed of Western capitalists to get an unprecedented amount of foreign capital to come into their country, and then use that foreign capital to engage in rapid urbanization and even development. If China had stayed unstable, if China had the same internal issues that India has, for example, that made it much easier for there to be a capitalist oligarchy style structure then I don't think we'd be talking about China at all. Or at least we wouldn't be considering China a foreign adversary at all. We would be looking at China just like we look at India. The problem is China took that foreign capital and distributed it. China took that foreign capital and not developed at the behest of their own national capital owners, but at the behest of all of China and all of the Chinese workers, uplifting the material conditions of the Chinese working class across the board. That's the real issue. And now that centralized structure of governance is tremendously advantageous, especially when there is global political competition, because China gets to make decisions at the top that are, one, beneficial for its own working class, and two, China can dramatically restructure their economy almost overnight if they choose to do so. This is not something that the decentralized system of capitalists, the decentralized system of governance that Western liberal capitalist nations have. They work at the behest of capital, where in China, capital is still a servant of the government. Now, this is still problematic in some sorts, especially if the government no longer wants to operate in the direction of uplifting the material conditions of the working class. If overnight China decided, no, we're going to also be, we're going to operate in the same way that like a fascist government would work, they could do so. I'm sure that there would be rebellion if that were to take place, but so far they have not done so. But that is the problem with at least the American position here. It's a problem when it comes to manufacturing, because while Western liberal capitalist countries also have a system of subsidies, what corporate overlords do with said subsidies is very different than what the Chinese state forces companies to do. Okay? Or I mean, it's not an enforcement necessarily, but because they control the flows of capital internally inside of the country, they can change the incentive structure to get people to move into other sectors in a way that is much faster than the ways that this would work in a Western liberal democracy. They can move the money around. And when they move the money around, they can get people to focus on building up different sectors that are necessary for whatever goals that the government has. I think another advantage of central planning and the system of governance that China has is that it has allowed them to set in motion 15-year plans and now 5-year plans. Okay? Whereas Western liberal capitalist countries do not have that same structure. They do not have that same mechanism of control, or even if they did, because at the end of the day, states are incredibly powerful entities, right? The American government, if it chooses to do so, could actually, maybe not overnight, but and with a series of capital strikes and capital revolts, would be able to create a centrally planned economy as well. It would take a lot. It would require a lot of effort. It would require tremendous labor militancy, for example. But they could do that. It's not impossible. Every Western liberal capitalist nation could technically become a command economy, could have central planning if they chose to do so. We have a version of central planning in this country. Look at our agri sector. Look at the agribusiness, for example, right? It's just that we demand nothing in return for the subsidies, the taxpayer-funded subsidies, from the capital owners, because that's not the way this is supposed to be designed. The system is designed for capital owners to do whatever the fuck they want. And over time, we have increasingly financialized our economy and worry about fake improvements in the stock prices, because everything still goes back to improving shareholder value, increasing shareholder value. This forces the American government and the powerful, the class of capital owners in America to focus on short-term profits. This makes it impossible for the United States of America to have like a 10-year plan or a 15-year project. There's a reason why China could just like prop up the world's tallest fucking, the world's tallest bridge virtually overnight for pennies on the dollar, or develop thousands of miles of high-speed rail since the year 2000. Whereas in the United States of America, high-speed rail projects take decades and get nothing accomplished. It's not that the government has no power. It's that the government, the purpose of the government in Western nations is not to make these sorts of projects happen. It's to keep funneling money into unnecessary and increasingly costly middlemen. Yes, but sitting in a cubicle pushing pencils is far more prestigious than working with your hands. Would you suggest that the middlemen actually make something themselves? I mean, that's not even what I'm talking about. Because, this isn't even about like productive labor versus different forms of labor. I'm not even getting into that. I'm simply talking about like I'm simply talking about like the broader outlook here, that ultimately the American government is servile to capital and capital interests, and capital interests always revolve around improving profit margins for shareholders, increasing shareholder value. It's literally in the law. Okay? The boards have a fiduciary responsibility. If you are trying to compete against a country that doesn't have that interest whatsoever and simply wants to make government projects happen, or simply wants to outcompete Western industry in certain sectors, whether it be solar panels, or whether it be drone manufacturing, or whether it be electric vehicle manufacturing, for example, they are going to make a lot of investments into this field, and they are going to make prices so unimaginably affordable that it is virtually impossible for Western liberal capitalists to compete with them. It's just not going to happen. Unless Western capitalists either do one of two things. One, they can try to make new rules around global trade, which is what they are trying to do right now. Make it illegal, right? Make it illegal for Chinese goods to enter the European markets, for example, or the American markets, which is, once again, a nuisance for Western capital owners because of the way that they have designed global trade, right? The other thing they could potentially do is take a hard look at the way that they have approached manufacturing and the way that they have organized their system of governance under a capitalist organization of the economy, and restructure it. Restructure it so that they have they have an opportunity to actually outcompete China. Now, that's going to be very difficult because China has a 30-year, decades and decades of building a robust industrial base in their country. They have a 30-year head start.
It's funny how people say that. If you get this one, every time I do one, they forget about that one. I solved 8 wars. Go to Rwanda and the Congo. Talk about India and Pakistan. Look at Thailand. Look at all of the wars that we solved. And every time I solve one, they say, if you solve the next one, you're going to get the Nobel Prize. I didn't get a Nobel Prize. Somebody got it who's a very nice woman. Very nice. I don't know who she is, but she was very generous. So I don't care about all that stuff. I just care about saving lives. But this will be number 9. But every time I solve one, they said, sir, if you solve one more, you're going to be known as a peacekeeper. So to the best of my knowledge, we've never had a president that solved one war. Not one war. Bush started a war. A lot of them start wars, but they don't solve the wars. They don't.
I think one of the craziest parts about this, as he angles himself as the peace president, is that there is a former president who did stop a war. His name was Joseph Robinette Brandon. That's not even a joke. Like, he did do that. And everyone yelled at him for doing it at the time, except for people like myself and like the Chapo boys and Majority Report. There were very few allies on Biden's side on that issue. And of course, Biden then turned around and destroyed his legacy that will be forever tarnished because he turned around and gave Benjamin Netanyahu a bear hug after October 7, allowing Israel to do unlimited fucking genocide. When Donald Trump says he's the peace president, what's so crazy about it is that like Joe Biden could have been definitionally the peace president if he demanded restraint from Israel. Okay, if he had, the Afghan withdrawal was one, but then on top of that, if he actually immediately insta-locked Israel into a restrained position, he could have been seen as a fucking peace president. And I don't even think Donald Trump would be president right now if he had done that. Of course, for that to also happen, he would have to not be an ultra-Zionist. Of course, for that to happen, he would also have to not be incredibly old. But, such is the nature of politics, I guess. But it is funny when Donald Trump tries to claim he's the peace president, when not only is he trying to wage war, not only is he trying to wage war in Venezuela, not only did he continue Israel's genocide for 9 extra months when he had every opportunity to stop Israel dead in his tracks as soon as he came into office, which he did entertain for a brief moment. But he's also doing war on U.S. soil. The only reason why it hasn't completely fucking turned into a full-blown war is that he's posturing and he's aggressively trying to get some kind of retaliation from the public, and the public is just not giving it to him. That's it. Because there is no other reason to send in the fucking military to all of these blue cities other than try to get the people riled up enough that like someone ends up getting fucking shot. That's it. There is nothing peaceful about like Donald Trump is unironically doing the domestic version of what he's doing in Venezuela, which is obviously supposed to be a little bit more restrained in democratic cities right now. That's what he's doing. He's like circling around and deploying the military to blue cities in an effort to foment some sort of civil unrest. It is fucking insane. And we're supposed to sit here and be like, that's my peace president, dude.
Settle them. And especially when they have nothing to do with us. I sell almost, I guess, just about all of these wars had nothing to do with us. But I saved tens of millions of lives. The Prime Minister of Pakistan said, I saved millions of lives in interceding on Pakistan. And you look at Pakistan and India as an example. That would have been a...
Yeah, you know what's funny about that? India denies this. Yeah, India denies that, which is funny. I retweeted Armand, the #1 China glazer, yesterday on this issue, where he actually brought this down. Arnaud Bertrand, #1 China glazer. Cambodia and Thailand, it was a border conflict that ended thanks to mediation by Malaysia. All Trump did was a phone call threatening tariffs. Kosovo and Serbia, there was no war. DRC and Rwanda, war did not end. Violence continues. Pakistan and India. India is adamant there was no U.S. mediation. Israel and Iran. The U.S. was literally a belligerent, obviously. Remember, the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Egypt and Ethiopia, there was no war. Armenia and Azerbaijan, the peace deal hasn't actually been signed. Israel and Hamas, beyond obscene for the U.S. to take credit for ending a genocide that it was a key enabler of. Doesn't this guy own Louis Vuitton? No, that's a different Arnaud. That's so funny. Yeah. One of the world's wealthiest billionaires who happens to sit on top of the throne of Louis Vuitton also seems to be a prolific Twitter poster who defends China all the time.